Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Autism Now What podcast. Today, I am speaking to Candice Breetzke from Pretoria, who is a senior case manager at the Star Academy. Now, Candice and my relationship goes a very, very long way back. Candice was actually working on David's ABA team when he was 2 years old. And David is 20 years old today. And I will never forget how Candice used to arrive at my door at 7 o'clock in the morning. She used to drive 45 minutes to get to my house to, I think, arrive at 7 o'clock in the morning and to be ready for David's ABA program. And for at least 9 months, I remember how she used to be able to get David to do things that nobody else could. But not only did she deliver such an expert ABA service to David when he was 2, she carried me and she gave me so much hope. And when she burst through that door in the morning, it just lifted me and it made me feel so positive. And I knew my son was just in the best hands. I knew that I was giving him the best chance at life. And Candice, I'll never forget how you used to do object discrimination with David because we were trying to teach him language, and object labels is one of the very first language targets that we concentrate on when we teach children on the spectrum language, because we need to teach them how to discriminate between objects. And I used to walk down the passage and I used to hear Candice say, "David, give me cup. David, give me shoe." And Candice was so committed. Every single session she gave 150% of herself, and she will forever be in our hearts. And I'm so grateful to her. And now I'm so proud because, sure, is it like 16 years later, she's working at Star Academy and she's responsible to program ABA programs for many children around the world. She's got kids she services in person, on Zoom, and she has a wealth of information to share with us. So Candice, tell us more about your qualifications and experience working in autism.
Okay, so my qualifications are, I've got a honours in psychology and then my honours and masters in augmentative and alternative communication. I got into working with children with autism in my honours year of psychology, which was in 2001. So a long time ago. And yeah, I just never looked back. That was what I was made to do. So I did take a break to be a mom. And then when my kids were all a little bit better, I found myself back doing ABA and working with children on the spectrum. So yeah, that's my background.
It's so nice to hear about your qualifications. And as I'm talking to you now, I'm actually sitting at the Joburg Centre, where we work with a lot of little kids in Highlands North, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds on the spectrum. So you guys can hear the background noise. One of the little kids just said a sound, and there's a lot of cheering and noise going on in the passage because this kid managed to say a sound he was struggling with for a while. So there's a lot of cheers echoing down the passage as we speak. Now, Candice, today we're going to chat about a particular case. The mom is Angela and the child is Zane, and they're actually from the UK. You were assigned to Zane and Angela when it was COVID, and you know, you didn't have the child in front of you. You were introduced to the mom on a screen, and now you had to program for this child. What went through your mind when you did his initial assessment? How did you know what to do?
Yeah, so I have to say that doing that assessment with a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, I think it was just before he turned 3, via Zoom was quite tricky. I had prepared a whole lot of PowerPoint slides, which in the end didn't really work. So fortunately, he has a mom who's on the ball and really committed, and we were able to then slowly, I would give her instructions and she would find objects and things that we needed in order to kind of see at what level Zane was at. So it wasn't your usual intake where I had this one-on-one contact with the child, and within, an hour, you kind of know, okay, this is what I need to do. It took a little bit more time, and I think, if I'm honest, putting together his program was a little bit of a hit and miss. But the good thing was that, I got a lot of feedback from his mom, and we put these lessons in place. And then as time went on with me doing the supervision and the overlaps, we were quickly able to determine what was working, what wasn't working, and update his program accordingly.
And when he started, what did he look like? Did he have speech?
Okay, so sorry, I think I've kind of covered one or two questions in one. But yeah, so when Zane started, he had good receptive language. So he was able to, point to objects quite easily. He was able to find colors and shapes, the odd few, quite easily. But in terms of his speech, he had no language. So the most that he was doing when we did the intake and shortly after was making the sort of approximations of beginning sounds of words, but no full words at the time of the intake and beginning the program.
And his imitation skills, how were they fluent? Would he imitate?
Yeah, so he did have the ability to imitate, but it was very much on his own terms and if he felt like it. So it wasn't consistent. His ability to imitate was definitely not consistent at the time.
Why is imitation important?
So, imitation is really the building block for learning. If you think of a baby and all the things that they imitate initially, facial expressions, fine motor movements, and as you go on, you need to be able to imitate in order to learn, because that in general is what learning from your environment entails, is being able to look at adults or peers and do what they do and learn through imitation. So if you don't have the skill of imitation, then learning becomes very difficult, if not impossible.
I completely agree with you. A 2-year-old learns through imitation, and often the parents will say to me, but Ilana, I want him to go to school. And I'll say, that's great. We're going to work towards that. But we definitely need to first ensure that we've got those prerequisite skills down, because if the child's imitation skills are not fluent, the child is going to struggle to learn from their natural environment and to really achieve the best learning opportunity from going to school. They first need fluent imitation skills. And, all the parents want their children to speak. And so I always explain that they first need to be able to imitate gross motor actions, and then or actions with objects, gross motor imitation. Then we're going to try and get the sounds in isolation. Every consonant, vowel, we move to blends and then to words. There's so many foundational skills that we just need to get in place before they can actually go to school. Do you agree with me, Candice? We need to get certain skills in place before that little child is ready for play school or nursery.
No, I wholeheartedly agree, Ilana. I think my standard response to parents who say, but he can do this and I want him to do this, is we need the building blocks and we need the foundation in place, and if you don't have that foundation securely formed, then later on, even though they're acquiring certain things, it's going to crumble because they don't have the building blocks in place. So I always stress to parents, this may feel to you like a waste of time. It may feel like, a tedious procedure, but if we don't have the building blocks in place, your child is going to have splinter skills, which are later on going to be meaningless. And I think, to get back to your point with the imitation, we work from the outside in. You work from gross motor to fine motor to oral motor. But if those gross motor skills are not in place and the imitation is not in place, you're going to struggle to do oral motor imitation and then eventually to read and to write. So everything, all those building blocks culminate eventually in that final, task of speaking and reading and writing.
And then just a quick question. Why do the kids need that repetition? Some parents feel it's too much, 5 hours a day, the child's 2 years old, 7, are you serious?
Yeah, so I mean, repetition is important, especially for our children with ASD, because we want to consolidate skills. We want to make sure that they don't only know it today, but they also know it tomorrow, and that they also know it with different people. So that's all part of the process of generalizing. And it's so important that we consolidate those skills properly. So that repetition ensures that that takes place. So it is incredibly important.
I know we're meant to be talking about Zane's case, and we're going to get back to his case in a second, but you use the word generalization of skills. Just take a moment and tell us why generalization is important.
So I think we can actually circle back to Zane for this. So when Zane was doing his therapy via Zoom, there were many things that he was able to do, and we would probe with Angela doing the probing, and he was able to do it. And so we assumed that he could do it. When he would go to nursery, the same things, for example, identifying colors, identifying shapes, painting, he could all do in the setting at home with Angela, but he could not do that at school at all. And to take it even further, when they came out to South Africa, a number of things that had been mastered with his mom doing the session, we had to reteach because it wasn't generalized. So generalization is really the ability to carry a skill from one setting to another setting and from one person to other people. So it's across settings and across people. And so again, it's all good and well that a child can, organize numbers from 1 to 100 in the therapy session, but can he do it at school, and can he do it at home, and can he do it when his granny asks him to do it, as opposed to when his instructor asks him to do it?
That's a really good explanation. And applied behavior analysis, ABA, that's a teaching methodology that we follow at Star Academy. It has certain rules, and in ABA, in order for a skill to be mastered, the child has to achieve 80 to 100% across people and across locations. And that's when we have a mastered skill. It means that they have generalized the skill, and that's why they've mastered the skill. So in ABA, we're always working towards mastery. And I think what you were saying is that you achieved skill acquisition over Zoom, but then once you got Zane in person, you could actually secure his generalization of skills. Now, What was the benefit of working with the parent on Zoom? Because, the truth is that there are just parents remotely, and we don't have a choice but to work through Zoom and through the parents. We are obviously limited in what we can do versus having the child in person, but we can still rely on the Zoom sessions to help the children acquire certain skills. What was the benefit, of having this mom on board and having these Zooms with her? Angela is a phenomenal parent. I mean, she just took everything on board, and, she followed direction. But what is the benefit of the parents understanding how to help their child through ABA?
Okay, so I have to say that when we started on Zoom, I was skeptical, but I am 100% sold on doing Zoom sessions. There are endless benefits. So I think the first benefit is if this is your only option, at least your child is getting some form of input. So benefit number one, they are getting input. The second benefit is that even though the parent is doing it and they're not experienced in ABA, they are guided by an ABA therapist. So, you know, we provide the parents with the SD, so what to say, what the expected response is. So they are really guided and carried by the therapist that is assisting them on Zoom. And I mean, if we talk specifically about Zane, his progress with his mom via Zoom was phenomenal. So I think the key there being that Angela is incredibly dedicated and committed to ABA. So she does whatever it takes for Zane. So if we send stimuli that needs to be printed and prepared, you will know that that stimuli will be ready. So that is important from the parent side, is to really buy into it, to really give your all and provide what's needed from your side. And then from our side, we provide that support and that guidance and that professional ABA practice and principles. But it works, it really works very well. And together with a bit of parent training, so I did parent training with Angela beforehand, explaining how ABA works. And then every time I do an overlap, we do a little bit of training too, just going back over why it is important that we follow certain protocol, why it is important that we can't just master, you know, after 1 or 2 trials, even though he seems to know it. So it's just really providing that continual support and having that kind of relationship where you're working together as a team towards a common goal.
That's a beautiful explanation. Now, COVID lifted and we sent an ABA therapist instructor to the UK to stay with Angela and to work with Zane. What was Zane's biggest achievements during this in-person ABA period where our therapist went to London and stayed with Angela and delivered one-on-one instruction for Zane?
Okay, so yeah, there were some really amazing achievements during that short time. So we had set a few goals. Our goals were that we really wanted more social interaction and more participation at school. And so the instructor was going with him to school. The second goal was toileting. So it was important, very important to Angela that he be toilet trained. And then our third most important goal was language. So not just imitating and not just requesting. I think our ultimate goal for Zane is to actually have conversational, social language. And so what we were aiming at is really building on that and getting him to the point where he can do that. So in school, with the facilitation, he made so much progress. He had opportunities to interact with his peers, to use what ability he did have to speak, to speak and communicate with them. He also started participating in activities at school because of the facilitation. So he was guided to be able to do those activities. In terms of toilet training, we used intensive toilet training. And by the time that instructor left 6 weeks later, Zane was toilet trained. He is still doing so well with his toilet training. He has the odd accident, but that's more when he's distracted with something that he really enjoys. But he is now at the point, and it's only a few months later, where he's actually asking to go to the bathroom. So he's not even solely relying on us to take him. He can request to go to the bathroom. And being a little boy, he's decided he also wants to stand when he makes a wee. So he did exceptionally well in those 2 areas. His language expanded beautifully while the instructor was there, simply because he was getting so many more hours of intensive therapy. And that was definitely the key for everything, for toilet training, for his progression with language, for his progression across all of his lessons, was that he was getting a lot more time in therapy. But his language improved to 2 and 3 word sentences during that time. So there were massive, massive improvements.
It's so heartwarming to hear about his progress. And what I think is important is you were talking about our ABA trained therapist going to school with him and using that teaching opportunity to teach social skills at the school, he had an opportunity to model from typically developing children. And Candice, people often have such a skewed impression of ABA. It's rote, we sit at a table, we drill the kids, it's robotic. And it was so nice hearing you feedback on Zane's case, because the ABA was delivered at a mainstream nursery where the ABA trained person was there in the social environment, teaching the social skills as and when the opportunity presented. And I think that's so important for parents to understand that ABA is not about just sitting at the table and drilling skills. We're going to teach the child the skills they're missing in the environment that's going to be most suitable for their learning. Agreed?
Yes, definitely. And I think that that's such a misnomer with ABA, is that it's sitting at a table doing these incessant drills. And yes, there is a time and a place for sitting at the table and doing drills. But like we spoke before about generalization, we want these children to be able to function in the environment at large and to communicate with anybody and everybody. And so we have to move them away from the table and out of the room and adjust the way we teach to teach them in the natural environment and to help them to function in the natural environment.
Absolutely. So just backtracking on Angela's case. It was COVID, we Zoomed. COVID lifted, we sent an instructor trained in ABA to the UK. That instructor came back, Angela resumed Zoom sessions. He then decided she's going to bring Zane for the summer to South Africa, to our team in Pretoria, and to receive one-on-one instruction. And we were all very excited to meet her in person finally, and Zane. They have now been in South Africa almost 3 months. And Zane has been receiving one-on-one instruction for 7 hours a day at our Star Academy, Pretoria Academy. When Zane arrived in person from the UK, what skills did you identify that he needed to work on? And how did you tackle these deficits? Because Candice, you kind of knew, okay, I've got this child for 3 months. You know, we can't wave a magic wand in 3 months or overnight. ABA is a long process. You know, when we worked with my youngest son, Aaron, who lost his diagnosis, it took 4 years, 7 hours a day. But now Angela came from the UK, you had Zane in person. What did you identify as priority for your team to focus on? And, you know, how did you tackle these deficits that you identified when they landed from the UK?
Okay, so I mean, I just did an overlap with him today, and I just have to say that he is amazing. He's doing so well. But so I think the goals, Angela's goals for him are pretty set, that, you know, she wants that social interaction. She wants that communicative language. So those were our, again, priority goals. But obviously we had the academic goals that we were working on, and a few other, you know, gross motor, fine motor, developmental kind of goals. But I think what we did to tackle the language, so I mean, since Zane started in September, I think it was September last year that he started, he has mastered the language lessons, all of the language lessons expressively and receptively. So what we are doing now, what we did to improve his language, is to work on language fluency and accuracy. So this is in order to give him the ability to quickly recall and recognize different words, different phrases, and use them in language. So currently he's able to recognize across lessons. So this will include actions, objects, colors, shapes, emotions, a whole lot of lessons all combined. He can, within a minute, he can label 20 items fluently. So then further than that, we were working on letting him produce sentences rather than just words. And we're working on both minding, which is requesting, and then we're also working on tacting, which is labeling the environment and commenting on the environment. So Zane now in the last few weeks has started spontaneously requesting things. So for example, the one day I had a book and I was just holding it and he came to me and he said, read it. And he spontaneously will say things like, let's go outside. And where before we needed to prompt a full sentence, now he'll, for example, say animals, and we'll say, no, ask me nicely. And he'll say, I want animals. So that was really our focus, was expanding his language and letting him speak in sentences. And it's been intense. We focused on that a lot, and he really has made a lot of progress there. Then the social side was another important aspect for us. So obviously at the center, this is a little bit more difficult because we have children who themselves are struggling socially. But one of the lessons we've worked on is eye contact. And this morning I walked into the room and I said, hello, Zane. And he looked me in the eye and said, hello. So we've been working intensively on eye contact, greeting people and making eye contact, responding to his name and making eye contact. And he really is doing so well with this. But in order to expand his socialization, we enrolled him at a little preschool just down the road. So it's actually, it's a lovely setting. It's like two older ladies who run this very relaxed school, but they really have the best interest of the kids at heart. And when we started him there, it's only once a week on a Friday morning that we go. He was hesitant to come in. He was nervous of the other children. He had some flexibility issues. He just wanted to line up the animals and nobody should come near and touch them. Last week, he walked in, said goodbye to his mom, and went to a group of children and just sat with them. He plays alongside the children rather than playing in an isolated way. He'll bring the animals and play next to them. Then he, on his own, began playing with them. So they all were building a tower with the animals, and he participated, giving them their turn to put down and him his turn, and they participated in an activity together. So he's gone from this inflexibility, rigid way of interacting and playing to being really happy for everything in his environment to be disturbed. And then being at the school then also provides us with the opportunity to create and set up situations where he can request from a child, where he can offer them a turn, or where the one little girl wanted something that he had, and I said to her, just say, Zane, can you take this and can we swap? And he happily did that. So he's been placed in a situation with neurotypical children where he's almost being forced to respond and interact, and they don't let him get away with anything. They really go up to him and they'll say, come sit next to me, and if he's not close enough, they move closer to him. And then the school also offers like a little sport activity, and he was hesitant to participate with that, and now he goes and he actually lets the ladies that run that do it with him. He doesn't need me. I stand back. He lets them do it. He lets the school teachers do cutting and painting and everything with him. He goes with the teacher when it's time to wash hands and does it with the group. So again, it's this generalization of skills in a natural environment. So, I mean, these 3 months that they've had here have been invaluable. And I feel confident that Angela will now carry over these skills that he has learned when they're back in the UK.
Candice, I honestly just get goosebumps when I listen to his progress. It is incredible. Well done to you and your team for securing such measurable progress in such a short space of time. I actually had the privilege of seeing Zane and Angela on the weekend, and I can say that I definitely noticed an improvement in eye contact. I noticed an improvement in his all-round awareness. If I compare when he first landed from the UK to now, I just found him so much more aware of his environment. And a child needs that awareness because children learn from their natural environment all the time. I was very impressed by his language. I could hear that he was using more words than before, and his clarity has definitely improved. I would even say that his compliance had improved. And I picked that up just from seeing him when he arrived and then actually seeing him again on the weekend. So I can vouch for the fact that you and your team have done a phenomenal job to secure his skill set. And just listening to you again, people don't quite understand ABA. How beautiful was that feedback from you, that ABA has been delivered at a mainstream school, and how important it's been for Zane to be at that school and have the ABA instruction in that environment to actually learn those social skills. It was really lovely to hear all about that. Now, they're going back soon to the UK, and then they're going to resume Zoom sessions. And we intend in January next year to send of our instructors back to the UK. What goals have you set for Zane in the coming weeks?
Okay, so I mean, he has a week and a half left. So our aim is really to consolidate some of the social skills, because those are obviously more difficult to do when he's alone with his mom. So we've just today introduced a gaining attention lesson that we're going to run throughout the center for him, to at least, because he'll do it but inconsistently, so to get him to tap on the shoulder and say a person's name to get their attention for something. And I think that will also help with compliance and with behavior. To work a lot on the imitation lessons, because that is a lesson his mom finds difficult to do. And so we have now upped the imitation lessons to 2-step imitation for oral motor, gross motor, and fine motor. So almost to get him to a point of mastery with that within the next week and a half, which with Zane that's possible because he moves at such a rate. And then really just, I think, to consolidate that language fluency, to try add a few more targets there. This morning, we've been able to master out emotions expressively as well. He now knows all his emotions expressively. And then to just continue generalizing as much as we can in the next week and a half.
Candice, you've got it down. I love that explanation. You know where the program is going, and I think you've worked so well with Angela and with the team. You've been working with children on the spectrum for many, many, many years. You have many years of experience, and I just want to close with asking you, what message do you have for parents raising children on the spectrum? You know, what level of parent involvement is necessary in order to secure a child's success?
Okay, so before we do that, I just wanted to say something about Zane. So just to say that in a year, he has mastered 362 exemplars. He has generalized 61 targets, and he has mastered 18 overall activities. So he has made phenomenal progress. But now to get to your point, parent involvement. So it doesn't help as a parent, you send your child to us for 2 to 5 to 8 hours a day, but you do not follow through at home. I think this is what has made a key difference in Zane's case, is that Angela follows through at home all the time. She expects him to request. She doesn't anticipate his needs. We did a little bit of parent training for compliance in a shopping mall recently, and she lets us do it, and then she tries to do it herself. So it's that full buy-in and that full commitment. And I understand, you know, I am a mom of neurotypical children. So these things have just happened in my life. And I understand that as a parent of a child with special needs, the load that you bear is so much more, and it is so exhausting, and often it's lifelong. So, you know, there is this time of a bit of burnout and despondency. But I think that if you can give as much as you are able to give to your child when they are at home, based on the advice and the guidance that you are getting from your case manager, your child is just going to progress so much more. And that is going to motivate you and encourage you to keep on going. Whereas if you just bring them and drop them off at the center and then pick them up and carry on as usual, you're not going to see that progress and you're going to become more despondent. So I know it requires energy and it requires effort from the parent's side, but it really is worth it. It is worth it, and you will start being rewarded if you are giving that 100% buy-in along with the ABA therapy.
Candice, you've definitely sent a strong message, which I agree with 100%. Parent involvement is key to the child's success. And I agree with what you said. You know, David is 20 years old. We started his ABA program when he was 2. And David learned skills for his whole life through ABA. And today he works with a chef every day, and he has the level of independence that he has because of all the years of ABA. And then there's my youngest, Aaron, who through ABA, it took us 4 years, 7 hours a day. And, you know, he did lose his diagnosis. It was a recovery case. And I've seen thousands of children between my 2 sons over 16 years. And so there's so much potential in these kids. And ABA really goes a long way in securing their future, in teaching them functional skills so that they can lead independent and happy lives. But it's been so wonderful to chat to you about Zane's case. I'm so super proud of what you have achieved with this little boy and for this family. And well done to you and well done to your team. And I know Angela's going to listen to us unraveling Zane's case. So I just want to say that she is the most remarkable parent. And I have so much admiration and respect for her level of involvement, commitment, and persistence. I often speak to her on the phone, and we can be in the middle of a conversation, and Zane will have asked for something, and she'll stop her conversation with me, and she'll encourage Zane to make a sentence before she actually gives him that item that he requested. So she has 24 hours of dedication to this child, and she's certainly an inspiration to all of us. But thank you so much, and it was lovely to chat to you today.
Thanks, Ilana. It was nice talking to you too.